Hi all, this is Paras. Namaste to all of you. So on the occasion of World International Women's Day, I love to share with you 8 powerful women in the field of coaching who have been doing their work inspiring people locally and globally. Yes, 8 powerful faces. So in this video, I'm going to talk to them, want to hear their stories, want to hear their success, want to hear their dreams, and also the strengths, what took them from just not inspiring self, but transforming communities at their own capacity. So are you interested to know and learn more about them? Yes, let's go for it.
Gill McKay. She is a coach and trainer and is passionate about neuroscience. She believes that we all can step into the best versions of ourselves by understanding the power of our brains. Her work is all about becoming more effective and happier by building self-awareness of your thinking and communication style through understanding your brain preferences. By understanding those preferences and strengths, she helps individuals, teams, and whole organizations gain clarity, become more confident, effective, energized, engaged, happier, and focused on their strengths and diversity. She has a background in human resources, learning and development with long international experience, regularly working with diverse teams from other cultures. Gill is married, lives in London, and as well as her work, she's kept busy with her 3 teenage and adult children and 2 dogs. I'm delighted she's sharing her energy, passion, and perspective all the way from London on International Women's Day. So let's meet Gill McKay today and know more about her success stories. Hello, Gill McKay, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you, Paras?
I'm doing great, and namaste to you from India, and I'm so glad to have you, and congratulations for being the 8 powerful, inspiring women across the globe. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you.
Well, the thank yous from me. I feel inspired to have even been invited, and I'm so looking forward to meeting my fellow women. It's fantastic. Thank you.
And on the occasion of World International Women's Day, I would like to wish you, and thanks for inspiring many more. So we want to know more about you, Gill McKay. So if you'd like to just drive us through your entrepreneurship journey, or what is that something about your story can help us to learn more about you?
Yeah. So here's the thing. So first of all, hello from the UK, from a very rainy, almost snowy London. While we're recording this. So I'm in my 50s. So it's taken me a while to get to my entrepreneur journey. I know it's exactly 17 years because I started my entrepreneur journey when my youngest child was 17. And I'm glad that I was in the corporate world before that, because I do feel, maybe like many of us, that I learned in the corporate context. I earned my stripes. Maybe there's a self-belief thing here. Maybe I feel I earned the right to be an entrepreneur by earning my stripes in the organizational world. Whatever it is, I felt ready. And to a degree, well, I was ready because I was pregnant with my 3rd child when I came out of the business. But I came out of the business it was a big decision, but it was a decision where my values were actually contravened, Paras. If you want me to go into this, I'll tell you a little bit about that story.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'd worked the way up in the human resources learning and development ladder, and my CV was building. I was doing everything right in terms of CV and seniority, perhaps all the stuff that many of us have played with in our careers. Got to the board of a small organization, wonderful on the resume. And what was really interesting to me was the behavior of some of my peer groups, some of the guys, the men, and I don't want to generalize because this is a true story. I was the only female on the board of that organization.
Wow.
How it sensed to me as the HR director that what they wanted for them personally was different from what they wanted for their employees. And there were some situations that I won't go into detail that I wasn't comfortable with, where they were asking for various things to happen with pay, perks, bonuses, stock options, etc. that weren't as per the company policy. Do you know what it told me? It absolutely anchored and rooted that one of my core values was about fairness and about equity in organizations. So that's nothing to do with men or women. That's to do with people. It's to do with values. And for me, it was a trigger, actually, that really helped inform my decision into moving out of my own, moving into the entrepreneurial world, having a go at actioning the mantra that had been in my head for years. I'm sure many of you are the same, of, you know what, I can do this. I can play a bigger game. I don't need to be in the game for other people. Much as I'm aligned with many of the things I'm doing in the big organizational world, I can do this for me, and I can touch more people by serving through an entrepreneurship.
Wow, that's so inspiring for me to understand about the value conflict and how it triggered. And so moving on to the next question for you is, what are the specific skills that women need to excel as being an entrepreneur? So from having your rich experience of so many years, what is your take on that?
Yeah, really interesting. And it kind of comes a bit from the answer to the first question. I think number one, maybe it's not a skill, Paras, but I think it's an essential, is self-belief and maybe move that broader, self-awareness. I think that we tend to, many of us, men and women, girls and boys, and I think that our education system perpetuates this, we step into what we should be. And perhaps we are not, from a young age, given that voice or that opportunity to really think about, who are we? What are our strengths? What are our preferences? What do we absolutely love doing? When are we in our flow? And when can we take those strengths and use them for better service for others? So for me, absolutely, for entrepreneurship, it's really self-belief is number one. You know, so much of my work is around, my coaching work is around self-awareness and stepping into that bigger version of who you are, not who you want to be or who somebody else wants you to be. Let's eradicate that word should from our vocabulary. It's about being who we really are. So I think number one for me is about self-awareness. Number two, and I'm very congruent with this, and I think I'm still working through this, is really knowing your why. You know, what is it? It's not a skill, but I think it's an essential from an entrepreneur. What is it that you feel you are there to do and to serve in the world? What is your sense of purpose? So for me, my purpose is about giving people permission to be themselves. All of my coaching work and my training work around which uses neuroscience-based tools and around the brain, is about giving people a language to understand that self-awareness and help them identify who they are and why they are here in their entrepreneurial remit, what it is that they're going to do to achieve and to create wonder and magic in the wider world. So I think number two for me is about understanding your why, and understanding that your why and your passion, it will ebb and it'll flow. You know, life isn't always a beautiful, positive, calm ocean. There will be the big waves crashing as you move on, but really connecting and being aligned to your why really matters. And the last one, I was really thinking about this last night, actually. Something, again, I'm working on, none of us are the finished product, is about, as an entrepreneur, it's about self-leadership. So however you define leadership or the qualities of great leaders, how do you bring that for yourself to the people, the clients, the communities that you serve? What is it about leadership that you can take from your own learning and be congruent in your own skin? So is it around inspiration? Is it around really modeling those behaviors? Is it around visioning? What is it that you do so that you can lead yourself first before you lead others? So those are really my top three. I've kind of cheated because there's more in the whole self-leadership thing. So it's around self-awareness, around knowing your why, and self-leadership, working continually on your self-leadership on your entrepreneurial journey.
Lovely, because when you're sharing this, it's just connecting back to the theme of identity. What is my identity as a person?
Yes.
And what I want to be rather than what I should be. I really love that part of it. I think the critical voice is so big. Now,
So much so, yeah. I was talking to a lady the other day, a new lady that I'd met, very, very interesting. She's a mindset coach and very, very clear. She has her own models that she works towards, but she talked to me a lot. We were talking about the area of approval, and many of us at a subconscious level, we have almost an addiction to approval, that we don't move forward and take actions unless other people approve of what we're doing. Some of it's around validation, some of it's around people pleasing. And there's nothing wrong with wanting people to appreciate you and validate you. There's nothing wrong with wanting to please others. But if it sits at your core and it stops you moving forward, if it sits in the part of you that is fearful, then that will stop you on your entrepreneur journey. And I thought that was so interesting, the area of approval addiction. I think that many of us, and dare I say particularly women, will take this on board, but we do it almost at a subconscious level. We're busy, we have our families, we have our clients, we should do this, we should do that, we should be doing more. And some of it, if we are able to move out of the situation and look in as if we were advising a best friend, some of us is down to that addiction for approval that we may not be aware that we're doing. It was so interesting. It opened up a new frame of reference for me, talking to the lady I met last week.
That's lovely, because when you're sharing this, it's also talking to me. My country, we come from a collective society, and
Yes.
I just want to know your view about how do you see that, because the approval in my society is all about being loyal to the authority. Okay, so how do you see that across globe in your culture?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that is an enormous question. And I think when something is culturally embedded, then perhaps it's challenging for people to, I hope this term works, kind of push that envelope or burst their comfort bubble, if that makes sense. But I do believe, Paris, that we can be aligned to those cultural norms that we respect, and that we can step into the person that is aligned with those values and do bigger things too. And you know, if we disagree with those values and those cultural norms, then let's have a voice to be able to have a debate. It doesn't necessarily mean a conflict. It doesn't necessarily mean an argument. I think what I'm experiencing here in the Western world is, and I do quite a lot of work with companies from different origins. I've got a big client at the moment from Japan. And in Japan, it's very deferential in the hierarchy. And it made me laugh. I was asked to do a piece of work around agility. And I was laughing because I was like, okay, culturally, being agile and pushing that envelope, bursting the bubble in an organization that's all about the hierarchy and all about deferring to the people above, that's enormous change. That's real, not just behavioral change, but cultural and organizational norm change. And it's very interesting. There are pockets of agility within that organization. And for much of that, I think a lot of that comes down to leadership. So I go back to the self-leadership I was talking about before for you as an individual. What I saw in the organization where we were working around agility was where the leader took it on board. The leader was genuinely interested in participation from every member of the team. Genuinely, that mattered, that was important. But it's really hard to be that leader who busts out of that organizational cultural norm, because within his team or her team, they're able to operate. But what happens at the level above?
Yeah.
You know, you've got to be prepared to be aligned and take some courage and have that voice. It doesn't need to be conflict. It can be a great debate that opens everybody up for a new path in the future.
That's a lovely thought, Jill. I'm just wondering about you spoke about you were the only woman in the group of men. Okay?
Yeah.
How did you build your courage while making this path-breaking decisions? You know, being in a man's world from the era that you come in. Okay.
Yes.
So what is your mantra about courage? What kind of courage you really had to build within yourself?
Okay, so it's really interesting. I think there are a couple of things here. I'll take a title from a book first of all. Feel the fear and do it anyway. So there's a little bit of, you know what, from a brain point of view, and I'm going to show you, I'm looking around for my brain. I've got my model brain here. You know,
very colorful.
Fear is here, is within us. We should listen to our fear because fear keeps us safe. Fear informs us. I'll move that broader. We should listen to our gut because our gut is part of the information that informs the way we move forward. And as a complete tangent, I will come back to the question, a complete tangent, 80% of our neurons are in that older part, that instinctive part of the brain, guys. So this is all about really, please, let's listen to that fear. So what I did to come back to the question, I was fearful. I was proud of being promoted to the board of an organization where I was the only female. And it's quite interesting. Often the only female is in that female perceived role of HR. Yeah,
Okay.
people bit, interesting. So I was fearful in many ways, particularly because I knew the characters. I didn't come from outside, I was promoted up. So I knew some of the characters, but the characters also knew me and they knew the way I operated. I hope they knew my values, but they knew the service and the value that I could bring to the organization. I merited the promotion. But I will be really honest, I was fearful of being on a board with aggressive, quite macho people on the board. And frankly, some of that, the macho piece, was because the way the organization was measured was about results. It was quarterly driven. It was, you get what you measure, Paris. I think that's something I've really learned. What are we measuring?
Yeah.
In terms of culture, if you're measuring results and numbers, then people will work towards the numbers. If you're measuring happiness, maybe we'll start to look at happiness. So I really held the mirror up to myself and I felt the fear. But the other thing that I want to say that I think really matters, how did I manage that, is I wasn't afraid to ask for help. I think maybe this is a difference, huge generalization between men and women. I really wasn't afraid to ask for help. The guy who was the company secretary on the board of the organization, super professional, as indeed were all of my colleagues. And he was in his 60s and he became almost a mentor without being asked to be a mentor. He fell into that role because he was a trusted advisor. And I asked his advice. I asked for help. And I think so often at work, we don't do this. If we were a short person and we had a tall colleague, we wouldn't be shy about saying, can you help me get that thing off the top of the shelf?
Absolutely.
But why are we shy about saying, could you just help me with this? I'm really stuck. I don't know about how to write my vision down or how to align it with my team or put this communication message together. I think it's so interesting. We almost put our own barriers up in front of ourselves and stop asking for help. Organizations are built of people. People come from an ancestral perspective, from tribes and communities where we rely on each other to survive and prosper and thrive. At base level, it's about survival of the species. So it's so interesting what happens in organizations when people, their behaviors change. We don't become that tall and short person. We almost compete. And I sometimes think that in organizations, the metrics, what we measure, puts in place a divide between people, let alone men and women. Yeah.
So, that interesting point that you brought about asking for help.
Yeah.
And I just want to ask you, take your permission to ask you another question out there.
Of course.
It's more about, in many cultures, it's considered as asking for help is you being vulnerable, and vulnerability also brings a shame in the society. So what is your take for many women who want to be an entrepreneur and who want to ask for help and they want to grow and they don't have the permission? What is the message you want to give to them?
Well, taking your language, first of all, feel free to give yourself permission. Being an entrepreneur is about giving yourself permission to play larger in the world. And dare I say it, I'm going to use a really soft word, to be happier in the world, to be in your strength, to be in your self-awareness, to be in your zone of genius. I love the word vulnerability. And I know that the lady comes from the West. Many of you will have heard of her. Do follow Brené Brown. Brené Brown has many TED Talks and a number of amazing books. And she's done a huge amount of research. I actually like the empirical basis, the work that she's done around the word you used as well, shame and guilt. And it's so interesting. Women, we step into shame and guilt so easily. Hey ladies, why do we do this? I'm still doing it. I'm 57 years old and I'm still doing this, stepping in shame and guilt. And that word should I used before. Vulnerability, here's a reframe. oh boy, vulnerability is a strength. It truly is. If you can be vulnerable and give yourself permission to hold the space of vulnerability for yourself, then you will grow. You will be able to, in that space, to work out what matters to you, build some self-awareness, understand, put some words around your passion, put some words around your sense of purpose and your why and your alignment, how you align to that culture, what it is that you want to have a voice around and debate and perhaps disagree with. And you know what? It's okay to disagree. That's something I've learned in my later life, that disagreement doesn't mean an argument. Disagreement broadens out the debate, whereas agreement and consensus narrows us down. And sometimes narrowing down is good because we need to make a decision. But the world is a rich world. It's full of a diversity of personalities and people. And in that, you're going to get disagreement. And in that, you're going to get vulnerability. And I see that vulnerability and disagreement is a place of strength.
Wonderful. Yeah. That's so inspiring for many women.
Thank you.
Will be watching your video and learning from you. So another question that comes to me is, I want to have your reactions on the same, or your thoughts on the same, is shatter the glass ceiling or aim for the sky.
Yeah.
What would you recommend?
Well, you know what? I'd first of all say, ladies, let's say goodbye to glass ceiling. It's a glass floor.
Wow.
Right? I really mean that. We're all standing on the glass floor. And also, let's frame the sky. The sky isn't just above, the sky is all around us. We are in a spherical world. We are in a round world. So aim for the sky wherever that might take you, because it may take you left, right, up or down, sideways, or even inside yourself. And ladies, we're on a glass floor, and sometimes we're going to look through that glass floor and we're going to see other girls and boys and young people that we can help. We can bore a hole through the glass floor, put the rope ladder down and help them to climb up. So I think it's a wonderful metaphor. I'm very metaphorical in the way that I work. I'm very visual. Oh. I love the whole glass ceiling, glass floor, but also there's a glass door, ladies. Yeah. So we can open it, we can see through it, and we can walk to the other side. So I'm not sure I've answered the question. The sky is everywhere, so we aim for the sky, but let's say goodbye to the ceiling. Yeah, we're on the floor and we're walking through it and we're walking up the staircase.
That's lovely, and that's so inspiring. And it's just a quick question that comes to my mind is, women play so multiple roles in their lives. They wear so multiple hats. What would you like to advise for self-preservation and self-care for women?
I think self-preservation and self-care for men is exactly the same as for women. I really do. Ladies, let's honor our men. Let's honor our men and let's honor ourselves. Girls and boys, I'm so lucky. I've got 2 daughters and I've also got a son. And there's great difference between them. I do wonder whether I've treated my son, who was my firstborn, differently to how I've treated my daughters. It's interesting. We're open in our family and we have this debate. But let's have a world of kindness. Let's have a world where it honors diversity, difference, whether that's gender or whether it's sexuality, whether it's cultural, whether it's religion, whether it's opinion. Let's honor difference. And girls and boys, I really believe I would love to influence in some way the education system, girls and boys, where kids, they go to a nursery and they're starting off with their first social piece with other kids. It's dirty and muddy and playful and colourful, and they come home and they're exhausted and they're full of joy and creativity. And then we go to school, and as we go to school we wear uniforms, so we become little clones of ourselves. We line up outside the classroom and get counted, so we become number 1 or number 2 or number 7 or number 23. And as we go through schools, the pictures come out of the book. So in my world of neuroscience, it's kind of education is all about the left brain and the rules. What are we doing to ourselves in terms of creativity? And then we go to work and we say, right, Monday morning, we're going to have innovation hour. It just doesn't work that way. You
Yeah.
can't turn it on. So my answer to your question is, let's as parents, let's as adults, let's as aunties, uncles, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, grandparents, wherever we are, let's honor our men, women, children, teenagers, babies into the world, treat them with love, understand what their passions are, help them to develop a language for their self-awareness and for their sense of purpose, and then they can find their place in the world, encouraged by all of that love.
That's fabulous, Jill. And what I take away from your conversations about self-leadership concepts and the why and the self-belief is so very important for men and women. And I really love your thoughts about the values. It's not about the gender. It's about the values that we bring. And so equality as one of the values again goes back to values for me. So it's a lovely connecting with you and learning so beautiful aspects about your leadership and your entrepreneurship. But before we could close today's discussion, I think we could go more, but I'm sure you have less time. That's what you told me last time, so I'm mindful about it. So what is one message that you would like to give it to all the men, women, all the people who are seeking for being an entrepreneur, having their own identity in any form? So what is one message that you would love to give it to them?
Yeah. So my one message is, let's embrace giving each other and ourselves permission to be us. Yeah. Let's step into our power and honor that richness and diversity that all of those individual powers bring to the world. Let's just be us. Let's eradicate "we should do this" from our mindset and stop playing small.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a wonderful time. I'm enjoying the discussion. I'm flowing in the discussion. And thank you for being an inspiration and being so powerful. And how do I reach you? If people have to reach you, what is the way to connect to you?
Okay, well, thank you, Paris. I've also had a wonderful time. You and I, we know, could talk and talk and talk. We've got so much in common. So for me, the best way would be through LinkedIn. I post every day. Most of my posts are around neuroscience. So, I have Saturday and Sunday off when I'm planning for the next week. Okay. But I'd love to engage in the conversation. So it's not specifically about women. It's about people and about really stepping into the power of our brain and understanding, if we can understand what this 3-pound, 1.5 kilogram mass goes on in our heads a little bit more, then maybe that'll help to enable us to step into our power and give us permission to be us. So please do link with me on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Gill McKay, and that would be fantastic.
Thank you. Once again, it was really nice, and namaste to you. And once again, happy International Women's Day to you, and keep inspiring people and inspiring communities at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Paris, and happy Women's International Day to you as well.
Thank you.
To all women out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye there.
Bye-bye.